Hi, I'm Renee Gittens, and this is the Game Development Crisis Conference and Webinar Series. This conference is intended to equip game developers and studio leadership with the knowledge and tools they need to maintain successful development in times of crisis. These expert panels are dedicated to the skills and tools for working from home, studio leadership in the times of change, and mental health considerations and resources for game developers. This conference is brought to you by the International Game Developers Association and Take This. IGDA's mission is to support and empower game developers around the world in achieving fulfilling and sustainable careers. And Take This's mission is to decrease the stigma and increase the support for mental health in the game enthusiast community and inside the industry. Take This is currently part of the Stay in the Game Relief Fund. Collectively, the 4 organizations part of this fund support the mental health of game lovers and creators, work to create supportive environments for entry into this industry, and pave the way for a gaming industry and community that is as safe and inclusive as it is innovative. Please support this fund and gamers everywhere at the link below. We'd also like to extend a special thank you to our sponsor, Xbox. Their dedication to helping gamers and game developers everywhere makes programs like this possible. Today's panel is on supporting remote teams and at small studios. And I would like to turn this over to our panelists.
Thank you, Renee. My name is Crevoshay. I'm the Executive Director of Take This, and I will be moderating today's panel. And I'm going to leave it to our panelists to introduce themselves. And we'll start with Eka.
Hi, I'm Eka. I'm the Studio Director at Outerloop Games. We're mostly in Seattle, and we're spread all over the place, but we've been distributed before it was a necessity.
Thanks. And John?
I'm John Krajewski. I'm founder of Strange Loop Games. Also have a remote studio. We started off localized in Seattle, and we've since kind of spread all over the globe.
Great. Thank you both for being here today. I really appreciate it. We are going to start with a couple of questions just to lay the groundwork. So can you describe, each of you, what the communication tools and systems you use are? And then as a follow-up to that, are there any specific expectations and norms that you've implemented around the use of those tools?
Sure, I can go first. Most of our staff, we're a studio of 9 folks. We're mostly on 1 or 2 time zones with a couple exceptions. So our sort of office hours are all in Zoom. So we have a Zoom call that stays open essentially the whole day. If you're in the office, if you're in Zoom, you're in the office, and between that and Slack is how we essentially conduct business and figure out, design problems or things like that.
Great.
So on our end, we use Discord, which functionally is pretty similar to Slack. Discord works well for us because our community for the game we're developing, called Eco, they're based in Discord as well. So we have a nice kind of overlap between developers and community are in the same app, and we find it really good for bringing the community into development for people who are interested in that. We've actually hired a number of remote people that way, yeah, so we basically use Discord as asynchronous communication. We're in a lot of different time zones, so there's never really any time that like everybody is online because we're in so many different time zones. So asynchronous communication becomes pretty key, and Discord works well for that.
Cool, John. I wonder if you could speak a little bit more about how asynchronous communication works while you're trying to get stuff done, especially if you're working through creative challenges, and how you handle the expectations and norms around that.
Yeah, so it's kind of a mix of Discord, and then we use GitHub issues. So somebody will be working on a problem or discover a problem. They put all the information into the the issue, they message somebody about it, and they'll respond at whenever they're free. There is definitely a value to having synchronous communication, and for any two people, there's overlap in terms of work hours. And so when you start getting larger numbers of people, that the overlap becomes a lot harder. So sometimes the communications will be just between a couple individuals at a time throughout the day, and that works decently well. So yeah, that's kind of our approach for that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you've got a couple of different systems to have access to for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Eka, can you speak a little bit more about how you use that Zoom call and how you use your work hours? Because it's really different. You both have very different approaches.
Right. So usually when everyone's in the office in our Zoom call, we'll go around and kind of talk about what we're working on. We usually keep our cameras and mics turned off throughout the day, just because people are home and there's privacy and things like that. So it's like, want to respect that for sure. It's nice to have, in case you need to screen share or play test or trying to solve a problem, be able to share the screen and talk it over with somebody. It's been really useful. And really thinking about design ideas and talking through things, it's a lot quicker to do that over voice or video than it is to type it out on Slack or any sort of text-based system.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, the cameras stay off and mics stay off, but if someone needs you or you have a conversation, you can still hear them, and that works out pretty well.
So do you ever turn your cameras on and have group video chats?
Yes, we do. We'll do that for play tests. Well, one person will share the screen while everyone else is kind of taking notes and giving feedback. And then we'll do group chats for, different discussions and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the day. And then that with shared Google Docs and spreadsheets and things to task track.
Yeah. So John, do you ever use video chat in your team?
We do, yeah. We have our weekly meetings where we get as much of the team as possible into a video chat, and everyone talks about what they're working on, as well as we usually have like a personal question of some kind, or just like an icebreaker question. Because most of the team hasn't ever met each other in person. So we find that's pretty key to just building camaraderie between people, letting you get to know each other and kind of see your natural way of interacting outside of the work context, to just have these kind of free-form discussions. So it sounds kind of similar to how Eka's getting at, where you have, you kind of make time for that, and that becomes really valuable, I think.
Yeah, for sure. So it sounds like you both have pretty different types of work expectations in terms of visibility and hours, etc. How explicit have each of you made those work expectations among your team?
For us, I mean, as soon as the lockdown started happening, or everyone has different situations at home where a couple of my employees have kids that are usually in daycare, and now they're at home, so juggling that, or dealing with a partner, or dealing with a parent or a loved one that's going through a hard time. We made it very clear that we're not expecting anyone to work full time at all. Take care, like the work stuff will be fine. It'll be there. Work's always there. So trying to take care of your stuff, personal stuff at home, or your loved ones. So there's really no expectations for full time at all, and that's been sort of our stated goal through the last couple of months, and I think going forward for the next, I don't know how long. So it's just trying to till we're figuring out like sort of what works with everybody. And the biggest thing we ask and with everybody, including myself, is like we just communicate if you're in or not, or if we're not here for today or taking the day off or whatever. And that's and that's, I guess, in general, remote studio culture is just you have to be a little more communicative with things. So.
You do, yeah.
Yeah, for us, it's kind of similar. We let people choose their own hours. So people can have pretty much any hours they want. But we do try to get people to make those expected hours. So we have like a spreadsheet of when people are working, and you can see what the overlaps are going to be if you want to have a direct conversation with them. And then we have a lot of flexibility for, if you need to take time off because, you're sick or you need to take care of somebody, we have that kind of flexibility. So definitely a lot of independence is required from the team in a structure like this, and we kind of hire for that with that in mind. People who are very independently driven, self-driven, and they're able to kind of, guide themselves even if they don't have a rigid external structure, which doesn't necessarily work for everybody. So finding people who can adapt to that or who prefer that is kind of like a prerequisite for what we hire for. But in general, there's, if that works for you, that works pretty well.
So John, you bring up a really interesting point, because right now everybody's doing this remote work, and it is, there is less structure and there is less external motivation and focus. And I wonder if there are any tactics you've been able to identify to help people build those skills, because that's something everyone's trying to figure out right now.
Right. Kind of one of the tactics we use, we have a lot of it is kind of self-reporting. So we have our daily status channel and our weekly goals channel in Discord. And each week you'll put down what you want to get done for the week. And then we'll have a one-on-one meeting with a team lead, and we'll go over the tasks that each person has set for themselves and discuss them. So there's some commitment and buy-in that they're setting themselves. That works pretty well. And then daily status, when you start working, you post a daily status and say, this is what I'm going to be working on. People kind of know, when you're working, what you're doing, and if there's any overlaps with other stuff people are doing. So yeah, we kind of take that, what's usually an external structure, and we let people drive it themselves. I think is another good benefit is it kind of feels better. You're more invested when it's coming from yourself. But the flip side is you got to make sure that we're all going along the same vision. We don't have people going off and doing something totally in a different direction. And that's where the one-on-one meetings help a lot. So we do one-on-one meetings with each member of the team with another person. And that's kind of a good chance to set the pace, set the goals.
And you do those every week?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do those once a week.
Yeah. Yeah. Eka, what tools do you use?
Yeah, there's similar approaches. Sort of the daily things we do are similar to what John's describing, which is like, here's what I'm working on today. And then we kind of look at sort of bigger picture goals, depending on where we are in a project or what we're trying to do. It's like, here's sort of what we're trying to get to in, 2 months time or whatever that time frame is. And here's what we're doing weekly and here's what we're doing daily. And just checking in with everybody, just kind of posting in the same channel, just let everyone know that, hey, this dependency or whatever, that's taken care of. So it's a similar approach for us too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cool. And do you have weekly check-ins, one-on-one check-ins also?
Yeah, so I've been trying to do more one-on-ones. Before all this started, we've been doing more one-on-ones because there's a lot of things that, we've been fully remote for almost 3 years, and there's certain things that don't come out in a group discussion. So having a one-on-one time with folks, it's really beneficial just to check in on how they are and overall feeling of things. So we try to do those too.
Yeah, for sure. I do that. I have a remote team and have since prior to the pandemic as well. And I find the weekly one-on-ones to be essential with my direct reports. We have less frequent full staff meetings. I have a smaller team than either of you, but it just seems like if you don't use that time, if you don't take that focused time, then you're not going to hear things and you're not going to be able to monitor things in real time because you just don't have that level of visibility. Yeah.
I think the biggest challenge is the time zones for us. Like there's a number of one-on-ones that are either at 11 p.m. or 7 a.m., which is not always the most convenient times.
That's tough. That's really hard on you, isn't it?
Yeah, well, we'll have other members of the team do the one-on-one, so I don't need to do them with every single person. So some people have easier overlaps. So we try to spread that out, and it helps for just getting communication to just have different people having these meetings.
Oh, that's an interesting. So you're reinforcing connections across the team in that way.
Yeah, and then I'll usually meet with some of the other leads who have met with a couple other people and discuss those tasks secondhand with them. But yeah, it definitely helps for just getting connections within the team between each other. And I find that anything you can do to grow that is really helpful. Things like the general chat channel in Discord where you're just posting about games you're playing or you're posting about random stuff. Getting those discussions lets people build these connections between each other. And that's so key for being able to work with each other, knowing that you can ask someone questions, you can discuss things, breaks down those barriers, and that just has a lot of positive benefits.
Yeah, it sure does. It sure does. We do a lot of posting about what we're cooking.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll talk about our pets or the music we're listening to. I mean, those are super helpful.
Yeah, and intentional, right? You have to be really intentional about that stuff so that it it's okay for everybody to do it and have this conversation.
Totally.
Yeah. But I want to follow up on your 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. comment and ask you a little bit about handling work hours and the balance between all the aspects of your life so that you feel like work doesn't take over. Because one of the things that I keep hearing from folks in the industry over the last month or so is, I could work all the time and I'm always at work and there's no separation. And that concerns me quite a lot because you're setting yourself up for burnout there. So what are the tools that you use with yourselves and your teams to kind of manage that?
That's a tricky one. I think, for me personally, I think of time away from work as being very valuable for work. And if you want to do the best work you can, you're actually forcing yourself to forget about work for a while and go read a book or, go outside. So in a way, it's just kind of a different mindset. In terms of tools, I think just having a good routine, kind of like a defined schedule that you work so that you know that, okay, after this hour, I am off work and, I don't need to reply to anything. But that said, we do have a lot of people who have, they have Discord on their phone and somebody's online when it's like midnight their time and they happen to be up and they can answer questions really quickly. So it is kind of a mix of it's really valuable to be able to have that kind of instant casual communication, but it does kind of disrupt your off hours time. So it is something that we're still figuring out how exactly the best way to approach it is. It's mostly been pretty self-managed so far. But yeah, I'm curious to hear how you guys approach that.
Yeah. For us, before shutdown, I coach sports or I take my kids to practice. So there's a definite cutoff in the afternoon where I'm doing other stuff, doing stuff with my family, or I'll cook dinner. And these days I cook dinner every night, which has been great. So it's I have the schedule outside of my work hours that we'll play board games, we'll go outside, go play basketball, cook dinner, watch a show together. And that's been good to just have a structure that way. Now that everyone's home all the time, this is our work hours and this is our family time.
Nice.
Yeah, I think having kids, especially younger kids who need a lot of your attention and time, is a natural way of forcing separation from work at some point.
Definitely.
I'm gonna have kids. That's a solution. I see.
Yeah, I wouldn't endorse it as as an approach to solving this particular problem.
No.
But I think yeah.
I'll say in general, since I've had kids, I've had to be a lot more organized with my time. So.
Yes. Yeah, you really do. There's just no choice. And but that said, I've talked a lot about setting kind of ceremonies or practices, little routines that mark the end of your day. I think I've talked about before. I have a wonderful setup at my desk but I also have a circuit breaker, and I turn that off. Not, like a power strip. I turn the power strip off at a certain time at night in the evening, and I walk away. And sometimes, I do have Slack on my phone, and I have email on my phone, and I also have do not disturb hours set up on my phone. And so there are certain things at certain times that just go away. And I use those as tools. And there will be emergencies. There will be things that happen that are kind of extraordinary, and I'll keep an eye on it. But in general, no. And I was on Slack last night during dinner because I was posting pictures of what I was drinking, because we were having a conversation about whiskey, right? But that was a fun conversation, and added a little ambiance, and it was fine. So I think, having little ways of marking when you arrive at work and when you leave are really important, and communicating those out to your team members so they know what to expect. They know what your availability is. Seems really important.
Yeah, I will say, and I'm sure John feels the same way, it is still a struggle as a studio head, right? Because you're always kind of thinking about the business or the long-term picture, or your folks and payroll, or whatever. It's like really hard to turn off, and it's still a struggle. But I try to forget with a margarita or two here and there.
Yeah, I like what you said, Eve, about rituals. I think that's really a powerful thing. Like for me, make a coffee is like the start of the day. It's like, okay, now we're here. But having something to like mark the end of the day is a really cool idea. I hadn't thought of.
Yeah. It I kind of arrived at it by mistake. I was like, oh right, my screen's blinking. I should turn off my power strip. And then I realized that was a good way to stay away.
That's
And
great.
yeah, and tools also that we're developing while we're in isolation and quarantine can be things that we take with us. We're cooking every night. And so starting dinner marks the end of my workday. Right. And we can, even if you're not cooking every night and you're doing takeout, but preparing for dinner can be the thing that allows you to pivot and move on. And I have to make sure that my child eats lunch. There was one banner day when I forgot to feed her lunch a few weeks ago. And so I have to step away at lunchtime for a period of time every day. Every day. There's just and that gives me a break in the middle of the day, no matter what.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah.
One addition that I've enjoyed is a midday power nap, now that there's an easily accessible couch. I find it's actually been a good addition. Makes me more productive.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, there's some very, very smart and powerful people who have endorsed power naps over the years. So
yeah, especially after you've just been thinking really hard or working really hard on something, it kind of lets your brain like process that.
Yeah.
I will say having a dog right now has been really good too. Just if you don't have time to make kids, get yourself a pet.
Yeah, I got my dog. You might be able to see her back there jumping at the window now and then.
Yeah,
but she definitely demands some time.
Exactly right, and then just force you to go outside or go for a walk and playtime.
Yeah, I think we all have dogs, and just looking at mine over the shoulder. That's getting out and being forced to get out in any weather, in any situation, is a really great tool. Yeah. When you see overwork or signs of burnout among your team, how do you handle that?
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the good thing to do is to address it for sure, to like basically chat to them and find out what's going on. I mean, we have had cases like that, and first thing is to just start a dialogue, just see, is this working for you? Is this structure, what kind of structure do you want? Because I think it is kind of foreign to a lot of people to like have to set that themselves. So kind of like working with them to experiment, like how can we create a structure and a routine that's really works well for you,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of iterating on that. So I think it's kind of a process, and having that flexibility to say, okay, take a few days off, and think about how do you want to work, how do you want to approach this. We have so much potential for flexibility, so there's a lot of different options. You just got to experiment and find which one works best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I find even though we have a pretty relaxed pay time off policy, which is essentially unlimited, but you have to take a minimum number of days off, which has made a difference. Because people feel guilty taking time off if it's not explicitly said so. So if I start seeing, especially one of my programmers who's just always, he's always been sort of in between projects, or he's just has to do a lot. I was like, dude, you got to take some time off. So just force and kind of take a day off, play some games or whatever you need to do. Just, make sure you take time off and kind of reinforcing that message.
Yeah.
If we can.
That is even more important right now because we can't go on vacation, but taking time off is still really essential to prevent ourselves from getting burnt out. And so, yeah, I have conversations with my team pretty regularly about, so when is your next day off? And Eka, I really like that idea of an imposed minimum number of vacation days. Yeah. And of course, I run a mental health organization, so we do a lot of conversations about self-care and mental health days. Like we need to take a day to prevent ourselves from feeling the mental health impacts of what we do. And just being really explicit that that's part of how we maintain good work and part of how we show up in the best way possible is to take care of ourselves by walking away sometimes. Yeah, that's really important. I want to go back a little bit into the conversation that we were having earlier about voice versus text communication. So I think we covered this a little bit, but there was, I think that right now we're discovering really pretty profoundly what the difference is between text and voice communication and how well those work, especially when we're trying to do creative work or iteration. And can you describe can you dive a little bit more into how that's working for you and how you've set up those tools to make it possible to do especially the creative work in your teams?
Sure. For us, the hardest thing with text, for everybody, is intent, and just kind of reiterating that assume best intent when someone posts a message, because it can be read in a variety of ways depending on your mood and other things, or what you may be going through currently. So doing more creative work for us, in terms of like beginning of a project or brainstorming, the video voice chat works a lot better. And just seeing people face to face, kind of getting reactions or trying to read their facial language. It's a little easier. And so that's, for us, the Zoom stuff still, the video chat stuff's been sort of the best way for us to do that. Before all this, we would try to get together and do lunches once a month, just to have more FaceTime and just to hang out or go see a movie. There's 9 of us, 6 of us are sort of in the Seattle area, and try to meet somewhere more central. That was useful. And these days we'll try to play a game together over Zoom, just to kind of have a similar shared experience. But yeah, the creativity aspects and kind of brainstorming, definitely still for me, the video chat stuff has been the most useful.
Yeah, and what you say about reading things with the right intent. And with our studio, we have people from different countries that have pretty different cultures, which comes up. Like some of our Eastern European team can be super blunt about stuff to the point that it's like, wow, that feels a little like direct, but it's, you do have to kind of read it with the intent behind it. And then you get like our Australian team, which is like much more relaxed and kind of the opposite of blunt. And so you got to like amp it up a little bit on that side. So there's kind of like corrective like changes you make and how you read the stuff based on where it's coming from. And it is easier in voice. I think when you're face to face, it's, you know, you get this universal kind of emotions you can convey with your face and your tone of voice and stuff. So I think if there's ever a topic that's contentious, and it kind of comes up more often than you might think, just because I think people are really passionate about the different parts of the game, and they have a particular way that they want to implement something. And it's easy for that to start to feel kind of like contentious, but a lot of that goes away when you get a voice call. So anytime there's a feature that's kind of a hot topic, we'll try to make it into a voice meeting, discuss it in person, go over it together, and that definitely eases the tensions. So, but on the flip side, there's a lot of value to text. The text is very asynchronous, and you can have other team members come. There's this record of it that you can read it. So there's a lot of advantages and disadvantages, and I think it's basically a case of choosing the right tool for the job, and being aware of the different advantages of them.
Yeah. I can imagine that a highly technical conversation, it's really useful to have the documentation of text, right?
Yeah, exactly. And you can post screenshots, you can, share screens and stuff like that. So
yeah. I mean, I find it too that being able to search in Slack is kind of a goal. It's really important for institutional memory, for planning purposes. The documentation that you can do, and because I don't remember everything, turns out.
Yeah.
Especially these days where all the days just kind of blend together.
They do. They really do. Yeah. Yeah. As much as I have practices and ceremonies around, my days, there's very little difference between them. Some days I put on earrings and I take a shower. Other days I don't. That's just about the main difference, right?
All wearing pajama bottoms below the camera.
Yeah.
There you go.
For real. So the other thing that as we were talking in preparation for this conversation, that I thought would be really interesting is particular challenges to hiring remotely, and identifying and hiring and vetting and searching remotely. And so I'd just like to have that conversation too.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, you go ahead, John.
So we've been doing that for a while, kind of before the lockdown as well. And for us, it's really helped by the fact that our game is a multiplayer community collaboration game. So we try to hire a lot from the community, and we promote that in different ways. Like, we have the source code of the game is available if you buy in at a certain tier. So we have people who will be dev tier backers, who then get access to the source code, and they can actually start submitting code to us. And we hired a few people that way that they just start making changes to the game for fun, and they end up being like some of the most passionate, best developers. Even if they're not that experienced beforehand, like, finding somebody like that is just gold, because they're doing it for fun. It's their passion. So we really try to aim for that. It's finding people who have, they're very self-driven, they're self-motivated, they like the vision of the game and the way the company works, and just being out there with the game, having that community that spreads out and people discover it that way, is super beneficial for the recruiting aspect, because it requires a certain type of person, right? If you're working remotely, you got to be self-driven, you got to be independent, you got to be able to handle this on your own, and that's a select group of people. So reaching them is pretty key.
So essentially, you're doing a trial. You're giving people the opportunity to demonstrate their as opposed to just a straight up interview, which is just a very difficult and poor way to vet somebody.
Yeah. So we have a number of people who they kind of self-trial where they just start making changes, but we also hire from different recruiting sites. So we'll set up ads in different locations around the world, so that we're not limiting ourselves to a single area, but it's a remote job, so we can hire from anywhere. So we just get a really nice selection of candidates that way. And usually when possible, we'll invite them and we'll have them do a programming test if they're a programmer, or an art test if they're an artist. And if they do well on that, we'll invite them to just work on a trial basis for a couple weeks, where they just start working on bugs, or they start, making a change that we ask them to, which doesn't always work if they already have a job and they're looking to switch jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's kind of hard for them to have like a second job. So sometimes that's ideal, sometimes it's not. But definitely prefer that, because you can tell a lot just by how do they start interacting with the team, how are they interacting with the code base. So we aim for that, but it's not always entirely possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Eka, what's your process?
Yeah, so we our last project, Falcon Age, shipped last year. It was 4 of us full time, 5 contractors, and I was doing way too many things, so I wanted to kind of expand our more full-time hires. So my process has been a lot of Twitter with people that I think might be a good fit for this studio culture. Diversity is a big initiative for us, so trying to hire from diverse backgrounds, locations, and skill level. Also, give people more of a chance that they normally would not get, or it's been a goal. So I've mostly been reaching out to people through Twitter, having conversations, either doing trials, short-term work to see if they like us, that we like them, how they mesh well with the team and the projects. And then last 4 hires have been that way, where we do short-term work and we'll go more full-time, longer term. For us, it's like we're hiring for more than just a project. It's hiring for longer, longer multiple projects of studio culture approach. So it's been working out pretty well. Twitter's been a good thing for us, mostly because I'm like looking at someone that's posting or looking at the work they're doing. It's like, oh, that'd be a great fit. Would they be, so I pitch them a project or pitch the studio and see if they were interested. And we have one person in Brisbane, Australia. We had another one in Chennai, India, who's in Vancouver now. But like that's how that worked out. So there's a little bit of overlap, but like it's been working out. Again, with John saying, like they need to be more independent to work in this kind of situation. But the cool thing is you're not having to move somebody halfway around the world to find out if they don't work or not, right? You don't have to uproot their lives, their homes to work at a studio. They can do it from their home.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the benefits are great.
Yeah.
Curious, how do you find people on Twitter?
It depends. I mean, I have a pretty curated feed, but I see stuff bubble up. Like if it's an art thing that gets a lot of retweets, and I was like, oh, I like that person, their work, and it'd be a good fit for this project. So I'll reach out to them that way. Most have been finding work that I like, and then having a conversation with them, we're starting on new projects, so kind of pitching them the idea, see if they liked it, and then going from there.
Awesome.
And I'm pretty active on Twitter, and that's like my main form of sort of talking to the world for us, for marketing, for reaching out to folks, PR, whatever. So.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. You also mentioned that diversity was a major priority for you.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit more about why? I mean, I know, but I'd like to hear it from you, and also how you do that intentionally on Twitter.
Oh, sure. So I've been in games for 23 years. 3 years when we started Outerloop, last 3 years. But before that, I was usually the 1 or 2 people of color on a team of mostly white men. So like intentionally when I started Outerloop, like the type of games I wanted to make and type of stories I wanted to tell, and also the people that make the game, was intention to start trying to recruit people and work with other folks that are normally not on game dev teams. So our first game was about fighting colonizers and raising a falcon. So it's like different types of gameplay, and theme approaches as well. So that was, it starts with the project, and then we try to get people that I'd like to work with, the people I've heard on podcasts or people I follow on Twitter that would be interesting to work with for the kind of themes that we're doing. And then it's hard to hiring diversely for sure. So it's like I try to keep an eye on. I do a lot of I'll go on, if it's an artist, I'll go on art stations and look around with things or see what bubbles up, or talk to other friends that artists that might not have sort of the experience a typical artist would have, just to give them more of a chance. And there's a lot of mentoring going on too, though, that I do in my spare time. That helps with that, and then try to foster or cultivate more skill set from people that aren't normally getting the sort of the chance to do in a regular studio setting.
So mentoring of your employees once you hire them.
Or like the way I was able to start my studios because I had friends that had started studios before, and I asked a bunch of dumb questions which I didn't know anything about, and that's I was able to learn the things I needed to do, and that's something I had been passing on to other studio heads or people that want to get into independent game development. I try to do as much as possible to kind of foster the next generation of developers. So I do that with friends or with other people that reach out to me on Twitter or social media, and also with the employees as well. So we'll do some fostering, after they're hired as well, and before they're hired. So
yeah, mentorship is
really key to have that mentoring aspect when you're working remotely. I mean, for us, I find the difference between hiring someone remotely as an individual versus hiring a outsourcing company that kind of supplies a staff is just night and day. Like for us, we want to hire individuals who are going to be long-term contributors to the project. They're going to hopefully work on this game as well as future games. And as we grow the company, they'll be themselves mentors for new people who come in as well. So really, choosing individuals, investing in them is much more valuable than having a third-party company that's providing people that can get switched out at various times. You don't have that continuity. You don't build up that kind of institutional knowledge or that like camaraderie between team members, which I think is really valuable too. So for us, it's a lot harder to find individuals who can work with you long term, but it would be a lot faster to just work with a company. It's like, oh, here you go. Here's like 5 talented people. They're immediately working with you. But the long-term benefits are just so much more that we avoid the other option entirely.
Yeah, I think maybe that's a scale thing, right? Like we're at 9, so it's not like I'm looking for 5-10 folks to start on a project immediately, and that's probably like when you get to a Microsoft level where you have to hire 100 people in a short amount of time. Maybe that's just a scale thing.
Exactly. I mean, you just snap your fingers and have like a giant team ready, then that's an option.
Yeah, you do have a luxury at a smaller size to very carefully curate and cultivate a culture and a sense of belonging, and that is possible up to a size that's much larger than both of your studios,
right?
But at the AAA level, yeah. On the other hand, at at a large studio, you have teams within teams, and those can also be cultivated in very deliberate ways. And there's also ways to support and bring contractors in deliberately as team members and cultivate those relationships, for sure. But you're both describing really, really customized and intentional hiring strategies, and building culture from hiring up, right? That you think about your culture and your sense of of continuity, and also the sustainability of the company from the moment you hire.
Yes.
Make those decisions. And I think that's really, really important. You're both talking about not about hiring for this immediate need, but hiring over the long term. And that's a lesson that anyone can learn. How do we build something that's sustainable? I've been working with some HR leaders across the industry and have heard similar things from much larger companies, 10x what your size is, about really thinking strategically about any hire across multiple projects as a member of the company, not of the project.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think if you're just hiring for your immediate problem without mind to the rest of the company and the long-term goals, you're really taking a gamble. So it's a matter of finding good fits that way.
Can you describe a little bit more what it means to hire? I mean, John, you said a little bit about people, who have a long-term commitment and who have certain skills, but what does it mean to hire for the company versus a project function?
Well, I think for us, we have very specific kind of game and vision that we're going for. So always the first thing I do when I'm interviewing somebody is I'll give them a copy of the game and just ask them, play this for a couple hours and let me know what you think of it. Let me know what you think of our ideas going forward and where we want to take it. We have this roadmap that I'll share with them where they can see what's coming and just get their thoughts on it, get their comments on it. You can tell a lot from how they think about the game, if it's a vision that they buy into, if it's something that they are passionate about or have the potential to be passionate about. So that's kind of the first step in finding people who are going to be a good fit for it. And then if we find people who are, if people find us because they're players of the game, that's ideal because they've already kind of self-selected that way. So yeah, it really is about finding people who identify with the kind of stuff we're creating. And that's, it's not necessarily everybody, it's a specific kind of game. So you want to, identify that group and rule out people who aren't interested in it as much. Because there's, it's easy to hire someone who just is interested in like, oh, they want to just have a job and just check in and then check out, which, you're going to get a certain level of results compared to somebody who also loves what they're doing. So finding people who love what they're doing is really key.
Yeah.
Yeah, for us, it's about figuring out our weak spots or blind spots or missing perspectives and trying to fulfill those needs. What are we not? What could we be doing better? What do we do well and what do we do badly? And could we hire to kind of even those out a little bit more?
Mm-hmm.
We hired a designer recently, and her first thing we asked her was like, play Falcon 8 and tell us what's wrong with it. And then she did that, and then it's like, okay, now you go and fix it for us. Thanks.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. And that worked out great, and she's awesome. So
awesome. Yeah, poke holes in it, and that will that'll help us. Yeah. It's important to be pretty self-aware of what your gaps are, so that you can fill them effectively.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That self-critical stance is super important. We're going to start taking questions really soon. And so I encourage folks on Twitch to drop your questions into chat, and we'll keep an eye on that. But in the meantime, I wanted to ask one last question, and we touched on this a little bit in terms of work time and work hours, but we're in the midst of a very strange time. And all of us are in a place that's still pretty much in quarantine. What are the changes and the considerations you've had to address, the changes in expectations, if any, that have happened since COVID came to the world?
I think we touched on it a little bit a while ago, but mostly just about sort of work expectations, and we're not expecting people to work full time at all. and there's different sort of personal challenges everyone's facing, whether it's childcare or a loved one that's going through issues, or them themselves going through stuff. So we wanted to reiterate that take the time you need to take care of things, or take a day off if you need to, or two, or a week, or whatever. The work isn't the priority right now, has been our message.
Yeah.
I think for us, one thing that's affected is that people, because we're growing, we're hiring new people right now. So we're able to hire people who maybe haven't worked remotely before, but are kind of forced to now. So that's kind of a nice flexibility that we can offer. But yeah, in terms of our existing employees, kind of what Eka said, just having that flexibility that if you need to take time off to take care of things, we totally support that.
So that means that both of you are facing potentially much lower productivity from certain members of your team.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, I mean, are you having to revise release schedules? Are you looking at major changes to what you can expect to get out into the world in the next year because of this?
Yeah, for sure. Like, we were in the middle of pitching new projects when this stuff started. So even from the people we were talking to that were, bigger companies that we're pitching to, everything slowed down for them too. So it's affecting everybody. It's certainly affecting my personal productivity. Like, it's harder to just focus on, this game we're working on, or anything really. So I think I expect everyone's productivity to be a little slower, and saying that's okay has been a pretty big deal. And yeah, I mean, we're okay financially. We can push things off a little bit, and I know not everyone's in the same situation as we are, where that's where they're not even working. So it's really difficult for a lot of folks. So trying to keep that in perspective for us, that's been a big thing too.
Yeah.
I think for me personally, there's less to do. So because of the shutdown, so I find myself kind of working more. So productivity hasn't necessarily been affected by a lot of the team, I think. But occasionally there are people who need to take time off, and that's totally fine. So in a way, it kind of balances out.
Mm-hmm.
But also just how we, our game is in early access and we're releasing updates for it, that we're not having like a shipping deadline right now. So the pressure to have like fast, releases on a specific date is less for us. So we kind of don't say our release date till we're like very sure about it. But at the same time, we're constantly communicating to our community and involving them in things. So having a little bit of flexibility on that end has definitely been nice, because that depends a lot on what kind of game you're making, what kind of structure of release you have.
Yeah, it does. It does. We've got a couple of other questions too from Twitch. The first is, how do you ensure teammate to teammate communication is going well with the reduced oversight of being remote? I think, John, you spoke a little bit about that, those one-on-ones across the team, but what other pieces?
Yeah, we kind of build that we have people talk to each other, and then I'll talk to one of them and kind of follow up, and just having this, like, it's like a graph where people talk to each other and then other people talk to other people about those connections. So just amping up the communication, kind of making it into the hierarchies or into graphs, I find is really good. And I find that problems that way become bubbled up pretty quickly. Somebody's having a hard time with something or taking too long on something, even if it's not directly visible to me, it'll come out through conversations with other people. So that definitely helps with that. And then just promoting, kind of as I talked about before, promoting the interpersonal kind of communications, like having icebreakers and meetings and playing games together and things like that is really powerful for communication in general. And it just makes for better life quality.
Mm-hmm.
Enjoy the people you're working with.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar for us. It's mostly, just having the sort of visibility of Slack, just posting on what they're working on, or, we try to reiterate, like, hey, is there anything blocking you? Is there anything you need? Speak up, and having sort of daily posts about what people are working on, or weekly, that, and someone will be like, hey, I'm working on that thing, or I need help with this, or again, it comes back down to especially communication, like whatever it's text or video chat or Slack or a Google Task, trying to keep sort of everyone aware of what you're working on. I think at our scale, maybe John, it's easier than what you're dealing with because you're more than double our size. It's probably a lot more following up with folks too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're about 25 people right now, so it's getting to that size where direct communication between everybody gets harder. So yeah, starting to have kind of levels you introduce, especially with time zones, makes it difficult too. So coming up with different solutions and systems for that has been useful.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Another question we see is, how do you lay down strict boundaries when working with family members, especially kids? How to enforce the idea that I'm not to be disturbed and not actually at home? This is a tough one.
For me, it's my boys are 14 and 12, so they have their own things they're focused on. I mean, it's still like, someone will be like, hey, can we do this thing? And we'll try to kind of lay out a schedule for the day. And they're older, so they kind of understand the idea of a schedule. And both of them are doing remote learning right now, so they have school in the morning, Zoom with their classmates and stuff, and then Fortnite for the rest of the day. But we try to schedule things in between, especially like I think I mentioned around the sort of the lunch break. Having moments to check in. I do have to go downstairs once in a while to get something to drink, so it's just checking in with the kids.
It turns out, yeah, we have to show up on it. Yeah, I mean, I have found from my perspective, when I really can't be disturbed, like right now, my door is closed, and I say very clearly, for this hour, I'm going to be on camera. You cannot disturb me, or I'm going to be doing X. You cannot disturb me. And my husband's here. I can also communicate to him that there are certain moments when I cannot be disturbed. And so that is when he needs to be available. I was like, today, I don't know. I can't do lunch today. You need to do it. Okay. So really tag teaming as much as possible, if you are able to, is important. And also setting up a schedule. Yeah. Being really clear about making sure that my daughter's 9 and she's able to deal with a list of tasks that she needs to do in a certain amount of time and stay focused on those. And that's a pretty effective tool. It's not foolproof. There are days when I have a child literally in my face, for half the day, and I just can't get anything done, and it's frustrating. There's not going to be anything that's foolproof during this time when kids are home. So have as much grace for yourself and for them as you can. And also, give yourself really clear, these are the times when I cannot be disturbed. And this is the time when I can give you attention. Like I will be unavailable for an hour and a half, and then I will be fully available, and kind of set those boundaries really clearly.
Yeah, for me, I don't have kids, so it's just my dog that's demanding all my time. And I can't really have discussions with her. She actually chewed through my network cable while I was on a call the other day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which is like a clear message, like pay attention to me.
Yeah.
So yeah,
my dog will come and nudge me on my side of my body, just like, hey, play with me right now. It's like, okay, all right, time to take a break.
Yep.
Yeah, it's actually kind of useful. Like, all right, here's like a 15-minute break. I'll go and take the dog out for a walk or play with him.
Yeah, I have definitely, I'll be like, oh yeah, I need to go outside for a second and like rest my eyes. And so I'll say to my, I'll do that with my dog too, but I'll say to my daughter, I have 20 minutes right now, or I have until this moment, and I'll give her my full attention for that amount of time. And I'll be like, okay, we're done now. I have to go back. She doesn't always like that, but I do it. I have to. All right. Well, it is 10:59 in my part of the world. And so I am going to pass this back to Renee. And I want to sincerely thank both Eka and John for taking this time to talk about what you've learned and how you manage a remote studio, and to provide that to to the world. So thank you all very much. And we'll see you next week when we have a full day of full conference schedule that we'll be announcing soon. We're looking forward to that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. That's been fun.
Awesome.
That was wonderful. So if you are interested in similar types of content to this, you are more than welcome to join us next week on May 14th from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Pacific time for 7 different talks about tools, approaches, and other skills to help you manage through this crisis and maintain successful development. Further, if you like this types of content and you want to see more support for both gamers and game developers, please donate to the Stay in the Game Relief Fund at the link below. Thank you all so much for joining us and your time, and we really look forward to seeing you next week as well. Take care.